For a few moments, Petra and I take to the scene of our mentor trying to rise from the slippery, vile stuff from his stomach. The reek of vomit and raw spirits almost brings my dinner up. We exchange a glance. Obviously, Hamish isn't much, but every Trinket is right about one thing. Once we're in the arena, he's all we've got. As if by some unspoken agreement, Petra and I take one of arms and help him to his feet. I tripped. Hamish asked. Smells bad. He wipes his hand on his rose, smearing his face with vomit. Let's get you back to our room, says Petra. Clean you up a bit. We half-lead, half-carry Hamish back to his compartments. Since we can't exactly sit down on the embroidered bedspread, we haul him into the bathtub and turn the shower on him. He hardly notices. It's okay, Petra says. I'll take it from here. I can't help but feeling a little grateful since the last thing I want to do is to strip down Hamish, wash the vomit out of his sister, and tuck him into bed. Possibly Petra is trying to make a good impression on him, but to be his favorite once the games begin. But judging by the state he is in, Hamish will have no memory of this tomorrow. All right, I said. I can send one of the capital people to help you. There is any number on the train, cooking for us, waiting for us, guarding us, taking care of us. No, I don't want them, says Petra. I nod and head toward my own room. I understand how Petra feels. I can't stand at the sight of the capital people myself, but making them deal with Hamish might be a small form of revenge. So I'm pondering the reason why he insists on taking Hamish, and all of a sudden I think, it's because he's being kind. Just as he wants to be kind, to give me the bread. The idea pulls me short. A kind of Petra Millock is far from more dangerous to me than any of the unkind one. Kind people have a way of working their way inside me and rooting there. And I can't let Petra do this. Not where we're going, so I decide from this moment on to have a little as possible to do with the baker's son. When I get back to my room, the train is pausing at the platform to refuel. I quickly open the window, toss the cookies Petra's father gave me out of the train, then slam the glass window shut. No more of either of them. Unfortunately, the packet of cookies hit the ground and burst open on a patch of dandelions by the track. I only see the image for a moment, but the train is off again. But it's enough. Enough to remind me that another dandelion is in the schoolyards years ago. I just turn around away from Petra's Millar's bruised face when I see the dandelion, and I knew hope wasn't lost. I plucked it carefully and hurried home. I grabbed a bucket and Prim's hand and headed to the meadow, and yes, it was dotted with the gold-headed weeds. After we harvested those, we scrounged inside the fence for probably stems and flowers. That night, we gorged ourselves on dandelion salad and the rest of the bakery bread. What else? Prim asked me. What other food can we find? Of all the things I promised her, I'll have to remember them. My mother has a book she taught me with her from an apothecary shop. The pages were made of old parchment and covered in ink drawn from plants. Neat handwritten blocks told their names, where to gather them, and where they came in bloom, their medical uses, but my father added other entries in the book. Plants for eating, not healing. Dandelions, pokeweed, wild onions, pines. Prim and I spent the rest of the day poring over those pages. The next day we were off school. For a while I hung around the edges of the meadow, but finally I worked up the courage to go inside the fence. It was the first time I'd been there alone, without my father's weapons to protect me. But I retrieved the small bow and arrows he made me from a small hollow tree. I probably didn't go more than 20 yards of the woods that day. Most of the time I perched up in the branches of an old oak, hoping for game to come by. After several hours I had the good luck to kill a rabbit. I shot a few rabbits before, with my father's guidance, but this time I did it on my own. We hadn't had meat in months. The sight of the rabbit seemed to stir something in my mother. She roused herself, skinned the carcass, and made a stew with the meat and some more greens Prim had gathered. Then she acted confused and went back to bed, but when the stew was done, we made her eat a bowl. The woods became our savior. The next day I went up I went a bit farther into his arms. It was slow going at first, but I was determined to feed us. I stole eggs from nests, caught fish in nets, sometimes managed to shoot a squirrel or rabbit for stew, then gathered the various plants that sprung up between my feet. Plants are tricky. Many are edible, but one false mouthful and you're dead. I checked and double-checked the plants I harvested from my father's pictures. I kept us alive. At any sign of danger, a distant howl, unexpected break in the branch, sent me flying back to the fence at first. Then I began to risk climbing trees to escape the wild dogs, that quickly got bored and moved on. Bears and cats lived deeper in, probably disliking the city reek of our district. On May 8th, I went to Justice Building, signed up for my terrace, pulled home my first batch of grain and oil in Prim's toy wagon. On the 8th of every month, I was entitled to do the same. I couldn't stop hunting and gathering, of course. The grain was not enough to live on, and there were other things to buy. Soap, milk, and thread that we did absolutely have to eat. I began to trade at the hop. It was frightening to enter the place without my father at my side, but people have respected him and they accepted me. Game was game after all, and no matter who shot it, I also sold at the back doors of the wealthier clients in town, trying to remember that my father had told me and learning a few new tricks as well. The butcher would buy my rabbits, but not the squirrels. The baker enjoyed squirrel, but would not only trade for one if his wife wasn't around. The peacemaker loved wild turkey. The mayor had a passion for strawberries. In late summer, I was washing up in a pond when I noticed the plants growing around me, tall as leaves like arrowheads, blossoms like 3 white petals. I knelt down in the water, my fingers digging up the soft mud, and then I pulled handfuls of the roots. Small bluish tubers that don't look like much but boiled or baked are as good as any potato. Cadmus, I said aloud. It's the plant I was named after for. I heard my father's voice joking. As long as you can find yourself, you'll never starve. I spent hours stirring up the pond bed with my toes and a stick, gathering the tubers that floated on top. That night we feasted on fish and Cadmus roots until we all were, for the first time in months, full. Slowly my mother returned to us. She began to clean and cook and preserve some of the food I brought in for winter. People treated us or paid money for medical remedies. One day I heard her singing. Prim was thrilled to have her back, but I kept watching and waiting for her to disappear on us once again. I didn't trust her, and some small gnarled place inside me hated her for her weakness, for her neglect, for the mud she had put us through. Prim forgave her, but I had taken a step back forward from my mother, put a wall to protect myself from needing her, and nothing was ever the same between us again. Now I was going to die without ever being set right. I thought about how I yelled at her today in the Justice Building. I had told her I loved her too, though, so maybe it would all balance out. For a while I stand staring at the train window, wishing I could open it again, but unsure of what would happen at such a high speed. In the distance, I could see the lights of another district. 7, 10? I don't know. I think of the people in their homes, settling for bed. I imagine my home with the shutters drawn tight. What are they doing now, my mother and Prim? Were they able to eat supper, the fish stew and the strawberries, or did a lie untouched on their plates? Did they watch the recap of these events on the battered old TV that sits on the table against the wall? Surely there were more tears. If my mom was holding up Be Strong for Prim, or had she already started to slip away, leaving the weight of the world on my sister's fragile shoulders? Prim will undoubtedly sleep with my mother tonight. The thought of the scruffy old buttercup posing himself on the bed to watch over Prim comforts me. If she cries, he will nose his way into her arms until she calms down and falls asleep. I'm so glad I didn't drown him. I imagine my home makes an ache with loneliness. The day seems endless. Gail and I could have eaten blackberries only this morning. It seems like a lifetime ago, like a long dream that deteriorated into a nightmare. Maybe, if I could go to sleep, I'll wake up back in District 12 where I belong. Probably the doors hold any numbers of nightgowns, but I can't strip off my shirt and pants and climb to get in my underwear. The The sheets are made of soft, silky fabric. A thick, fluffy comforter gives me immediate warmth. If I'm going to cry, now's the time to do it. By morning, I'll be able to wash the damage done by the tears from my face. But no tears come. I'm too tired or too numb to cry. The only thing I feel is desire to be somewhere else, so I let the train rock me into oblivion. Gray light is leaking through the curtains when the rapping rouses me. I hear every trinket calling me to rise. Up, 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 it's going to be a big, big, big day. I try and imagine for a moment what it'll be like to be inside like the woman's head. What thoughts fill her waking hours? What dreams come to her at night? I have no idea. I put the green outfit back on so it's not really dirty and it's just slightly crumpled for spending the night on the floor. My fingers race through circle around the little gold mockingbird that I think of the woods, and my father and of my mother, and Prim waking up, having to get on with things. I slept in the elaborate braided hair, and my mother dead for the reaping. It doesn't look too bad, so I just leave it up. It doesn't matter, we can't have far from the capital now. And once we reach the city, my stylist will dictate my look for the opening series tonight anyway. I just hope I get one who doesn't think nudity is the last word in fashion. As I enter the dining car, every trinket brushes by me with a cup of black coffee. She's muttering obscenities under her breath. Hamish, his face puffy and red from the previous day's indulgences, is chuckling. Petra holds a roll, and someone looks somewhat embarrassed. Sit down, says Hamish, waving me over. This moment I slide into my chair. I served an enormous platter of food. Eggs, ham, piles of fresh potatoes, a tureen of fruit sits in the ice to keep me chilled. The basket of rolls they set before me will keep my family going for a week. There's an elegant glass of orange juice. At least I think it's orange juice. I only ever once tasted orange juice at New Year's when my father brought us one as a special treat. A cup of coffee. My mom adores coffee, which we can almost never afford, but it only tastes bitter and thin to me. A rich brown cup or something I never seen. They also call it hot chocolate, says Petra. It's good. I take a sip of the hot, sweet, creamy liquid, and the shudder runs down me. Even through the rest of the meal beckons, I ignore it until I drain my cup. Then I stuff down every mouthful I can hold, which is a substantial amount, being careful not to overdo one of the richest stuff. One time my mother told me I always like to eat because I'll never see food again. Then I say, I won't unless I bring it home. That shut her up. Then my stomach feels like it's about to split open. I lean back and take in the breakfast companions. Peter is still eating, breathing out bits of roll and dipping them in hot chocolate. Hamish hasn't paid much attention to his platter, but he's knocking back a glass of red juice his platter, and he's knocking back a glass of red juice that he keeps feigning with a clear liquid from the bottle. Judging by the fumes, is some kind of spirit. I don't know Hamish, but I've seen him often in the hop, tossing handfuls of money on the counter for a woman who sells white liquor. He's incoherent by the time we reach the capital. I realize I detest Hamish. No wonder District 12 tributes never stands a chance. It isn't just that we've been unfurred or lack training. Some of our tributes have still been strong enough to make a go for it, but we rarely get sponsors, and he's a big part of the reason why. The rich people who back tributes, either because they're betting on them or simply before the bragging rights of picking a winner, expect someone classier than Hamish to deal with. So we're supposed to give us advice, I said to Hamish. Here's some advice. Stay alive, said Hamish, and then burst out laughing. I exchanged a look with Petra before I remembered I'm having nothing to do with him. I'm surprised to see the hardness in his eyes. He generally seems so mild. That's very funny, says Petra. Suddenly he lashes out at the glass in Hamish's hand. It shatters to the floor, sending the blood-red liquid running back to the back of the train. Only not for us. Hamish considered this a moment, then punches Petra in the jaw and knocks him from a chair. When he turns back to reach for the spirits, I drive my knife into the table between his hand and the bottle, barely missing his fingers. I brace myself to deflect his hit, but it doesn't come. Instead, he sits back and squints at us. "Well, what's this?" says Hamish. "Did I actually get a pair of fighters this year?" Peter rises back from the floor and scoops up the handful of ice from the fruit tunic. He starts to rise it to the red mark on his jaw. "No," says Hamish, stopping him. "Let the bruise show. The audience will think you've mixed up with another tribute before you even enter the arena. That's against the rules. Only if they catch you. That bruise will say you fought. You weren't caught. Even better," says Hamish. He turns to me. "Can you hit anything with a knife besides a table?" "A bow and arrow is my weapon, but I spent a fair amount of time throwing knives as well. Sometimes if I wounded an animal with an arrow, it's better to get a knife into it too, before I approach it. I realize that if I want Hamish's attention, this is the moment to make an impression." I yank the knife out of the table, get a grip on the blade, and throw it to the wall across the room. I was actually just hoping to get a good solid stuck, but it lodges in the seam between two panels, making me look a lot better than I am. "Stand over here, both of you," says Hamish, nodding to the middle of the room. We obey, and he circles us, prodding us like animals at a time, checking our muscles, examining our faces. "Well, you're not entirely hopeless. Seem fit. And once the stylist gets hold of you, you'll be attractive enough. Petra and I don't question this. The Hunger Games aren't a beauty contest, but the best-looking tributes always seem to pull more sponsors." "All right, I'll make a deal with you. You don't seem to interfere with my drinking, but I'd save silver enough to help you," says Hamish. But you have to do exactly what I say." It's not much of a deal, but still a giant step toward from 10 minutes ago when we had no guide at all. "Fine," says Petra. "So helpless," I say. "When we get to the arena, what's the best strategy for the copia for someone? One thing at a time. In a few minutes, we'll be pulling into the station. You'll be put in the hands of our stylist. You're not going to like what they do to you, but no matter what, don't resist." "But no buts, don't resist," says Hamish. He takes a bottle of spirits down the table and leaves the car. As the door swings shut behind him, the car goes dark. There's a few lights inside, but outside it's as if night has fallen again. I realize we must be in a tunnel that runs up through the mountain into the capital. The mountains form a natural barrier between the capital and the eastern district. It's almost impossible to enter from the east except through the tunnels. This geography advantage was a major factor in the district's losing war that led to my being a tribute today. Since the rebels had to scale the mountains, they were easy targets for the capital's air forces. Petra, Miller, and I stand in silence as the train speeds along. The tunnel goes on, and I think of the tons of rocks bring us from the sky as my chest tightens. I hate being encased in the stone this way. It reminds me of the mines and my father trapped, unable to reach sunlight, buried forever in the darkness. The train finally begins to slow, and suddenly bright light floods into the compartment. We can't help it. Both Petra and I run to the windows to see what we've only seen on television. The capital, the ruling city of Panem. The cameras have lied about its grandeur. If anything, they have captured the magnificence of the glistening buildings and the rainbow of hues in the towering sky. But the shiny cars that rolled down the wide paved streets, the oddly dressed people with bizarre hair and painted faces have never missed a meal. All the colors seem artificial, and the pinks too. The greens are too bright, the yellows painful to the eyes, like a few round wrists of hard candy we can never afford to buy in the tiny tea shop in District 12. The people begin to pour at us, point at us eagerly as they recognize the tribute train rolling into the city. I step away from the window, sickened by their excitement, knowing they can't wait to watch us die. But Petra holds us down. Actually waving and smiling at the gawking crowd. He only stops when the train pulls into the station, blocking us from his view. He sees me staring at him and shrugs. Who knows? One of them may be rich. I am a magician. I thought his actions since the reaping began. A friendly squeeze of my hand, his father showing me the cookies and promising to feed him. But did Petra put him up to that? Sears at the stations, volunteering to wish Henry should then challenge him this morning when apparently the nice guy approach had failed. Then the wavering at the window, always trying to win the crowd. All the pieces are still fitting together, but he says he has a plan forming. He hasn't accepted his death. He's already fighting hard to stay alive, which only means that kind Petra Malak, the boy who gave me breath, is fighting hard to kill me.